It was maybe it gets better. I don't know, but it was one of the worst beginnings to a game I've seen in a long time. Just
I think that's just Atlas Games, man. Hello and welcome to another Dead Pixel, a podcast about video games, entertainment, life, a little bit of everything between. With me today is my buddy Nick, the man who decides to run into restaurants screaming at the top of his lungs just for no apparent reason. How you doing, Nick?
doing good. Yeah, like it's the only way to get good service. I think you have to make yourself known. Um, and if someone doesn't try to stop you from doing that, then they're probably not going to care about you when you sit down at the table all quiet and meek. So that's, I mean, I receive unparalleled service whenever I go into these restaurants.
I mean, in today's day and age, filled with Karens and Chads, I guess you got to stand out from above the rest. So long as you're not like reenacting Michael Douglas's falling down, I think we're good.
Yeah, I usually scream, I need to talk to a manager, as loudly as I can. Um, but it's Texas, so I don't wave a gun around. I used to do that when I lived in Hawaii, but this is a red state, so you can't really. This is a constitutional carry state, so if I do that, I would I get blasted away.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what's the point of caring when everyone's caring? I mean, I remember Arizona used to be that. You'd always hear stories about some guy, pulling a gun at a 7-Eleven, and then it's like, oh yeah, the cashier and two or three other people draw on him, and it's like, and that was how they were apprehended. So
Yeah,
yeah, good
it's I
times.
think it's more what's the point of pulling a gun when you know everyone is carrying. uh, yeah, but it's fun. It's fun to run screaming into a restaurant. People usually even if there's a long line, if you just run screaming in there, people usually think you know what you're doing and they'll just get you served. I usually say something like, "I was here 5 minutes ago and my order got messed up," um, and then you scream some. When they say like by who, you say what you just say a racial slur by that blah 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 boy over there, and you kind of point in a really ambiguous direction, and that's it. Really becomes their main priority to get you out of the restaurant as fast as possible. And the best way for them to do that, you have to make that clear. The best way for them to do that is for them to give you what you want.
All right. I was hoping it'd be something more peaceful, like just Jim Carrey's most annoying sound in the world. And then you just walk in making that noise, and everyone's like, just whatever this guy needs, just give it to him so he can get out as quickly as possible.
Dude, that is so funny because like he like really delivers on that. He's like, "You want to hear the most annoying sound in the world?" And the sound that he makes, I can't make it, but Jim Carrey really delivers on like, yeah, that probably is, short list top five most annoying sounds in the world. Oh man,
Yeah.
gosh,
All right. Well, on that note, or the note that we cannot make, how have you been, man? How's it going?
for real, I've been okay. Um, it's getting warmer again down here. Though it is cool this weekend. It's been raining since like Thursday or since yesterday, I guess, a good bit. So I haven't been able to do much, but I've been able to play some games up since the last 2 weeks and watch some anime, watch some movies and shows and stuff. So there's plenty to talk about. I feel like the news is finally starting to come back a little bit during the winter, especially after Christmas. During the winter, I feel like everything just slows down so much because nothing's really going on. Now that it's spring again, things are starting back up, and there's a bit more to talk about.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's most definitely things are getting in the swing of things. We have here, quite a few new games coming out, and also, yeah, some big other little news, that we'll talk about in here in a second. So,
How?
speaking of which, we'll let
how
you kick it off.
well, I was gonna say, how are you, Joe? How are you doing? We always talk about me so
Uh,
much.
well, because you never ask, jerk face.
I just asked.
I know, but so much, so many. If you just rewind all those episodes, you just be like, yeah. All right, no. Well, thank you for
it's
asking. Yeah,
it's
we're
not
doing
what
all
you
right.
said, it's the way you said it.
I could read the intention in your eyes. But yeah, been doing good, doing good. I picked myself up a PlayStation 5 last week. Yeah,
Wait,
it was
did you tell me that?
no.
You're saving my
It's
live
I mean,
reaction.
it is right there, though. I was gonna wait
Oh
until,
my
like, maybe
gosh,
next
you're right.
episode
Well, it's
because I
freaking,
wasn't expecting you to,
it's
say anything, and then I was just gonna say,
blurry.
"How long will it take him to
That's
realize?"
pretty good.
Uh,
That would have been pretty good. But it's so blurry, and it's only like it's mostly revealed. I can see it now, but but I wouldn't just because it's out of focus. I just wouldn't have. I would have thought it's like papers in a book or something. Um,
but
well,
yeah,
good. I'm glad that you have
also said I
joined.
own God of War now, so that was also kind of a, indicator pre-show. Uh,
Well, I thought
yeah,
you were going to play that on
what about
PS4, though.
so the bundles went on sale, and the other week, they all dropped, like, $50. I'm not sure if they still are on
Uh,
sale, and so instead of being 560, it's 510 here in the US, and I happen to have enough, Target gift cards saved up because we buy a lot of the baby products from them, and they usually give, 15, $20 gift cards at a time. So I was able to drop the price of I think pre-tax was 330.
okay.
So, yeah, for 330, I'm like, "Sure, yeah, I might as well just pick this up now."
That's pretty good. That's definitely a good incentive. I was, you talked a lot over the over the past year or so about waiting until like a PS5 Pro or something like that, but
Or Slim or
that's
something because I absolutely hate the size of this thing.
that's true too. It is an eyesore and it's a piece of furniture really. But you were texting me a while ago and I told you, yeah, I really didn't think you were going to do it because because the way I put it to you is like, well, you already have a decent PC and you already have an Xbox Series X. So the only reason to really get PS5 is, well, there's only kind of two reasons. The main one to me is to play PlayStation exclusives, and the other one is to play VR, PSVR 2 stuff. If and when you can get a PSVR 2, which is another chunk of change to buy that. So so I thought you were gonna wait a little bit longer, but yeah, I mean, like, now is the time to get it if you're not gonna actually wait because it's a weird no man's land. It's gonna the PS5 Pro is gonna happen eventually, but you might end up waiting a kind of a long time and being sort of stuck without some of these kind of generationally good games if you wait.
Yeah, there was a lot of, rumors about, recently, just very, slim things about, a possible PS5 Pro coming out, and I really don't take much, stock into that. I'm thinking as slow as things have been lately across a lot of, like, reveals, I think we're probably not gonna get a Pro until next year. Normally, it would be this year, like, if you look at, like, every, like it's like I think the Pro came out for PS4, like, 3 years afterwards, and, but I think they're just gonna wait longer to do anything like that. I mean, heck, look how long they've gone with the base Switch. I mean, Nintendo is rocking an ancient piece of tech right there, which is having a hard time playing their flagship games like Pokemon, so but when it came to this, I was honestly thinking about, like, the soonest I was gonna buy one would have been Black Friday. I would have probably tried to do some sort of console bundle with maybe,
Probably would have been a
the
good deal at
PSVR
that
2,
time. You're right.
you
Yeah.
know but I'm like, honestly, $50 now off now is actually pretty stellar. I actually I've had the PlayStation Plus, subscription since almost the beginning, and so that means the entirety of the PS5 since that's been released, and so they've issued a lot of free games that way as well, and, like, I showed you an article that, come May, they're gonna be canceling their, their PlayStation, like, collection, which is mostly a lot of PS4 games, but games that you can play on your PS5, and they kind of reward you with, like, the best of. are some of the really good games for PS4, but you can play it. It's free for your PS5, and yeah, so I went ahead and downloaded a few of those games that I didn't actually own already. That's it. So and then because it was like I think I bought it right at the end of the month, last month, and so I went ahead and proceeded to download like 800 gigs onto it. So it's pretty much all full now.
Wow.
I went ahead and I had a spare hard drive, backed up a few things, and my data cap just like I was so close to breaking my data cap. I mean, you know what? It's fine because I have like I did the like I'm looking. I'm like, okay, I'll be done downloading, and I'll have like less than 100 gigs, and I have like 12 hours left before the next my next month, and everything will reset. So
That's just good planning, man. That's just good budgeting.
so yeah, it was so far I haven't really got too much chance to play anything on it because I've been playing uh Dead Space, which I'll talk about more about it when during our games portion.
Right.
But that I got that one from the library for the Xbox. So yeah. But no, that's it, man. I've been super busy with just some family things and Easter. This being Easter Sunday, weekend. So
Yeah, it's coming
uh,
right up.
all
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
yeah. All right. Well, to the news then, I guess. You have a handful of things for us today.
To the news. Yes, yes. E3 got canceled. Seems like that is the final nail in the coffin, I would say. Maybe for a while. Um, E3 has not really been relevant in probably 5 years. I don't think it was. Man, man. Yeah. Anyway, so it's been canceled. It's just. I mean, like Nintendo dropped out nearly a decade ago, didn't they? I think they stopped showing up. I think that was in the article I read that they stopped showing up like back in 2013. I think maybe even earlier.
So they've stopped showing up in their, like quote unquote official capacity. They had come out, like I remember they built a booth for Breath of the
I
Wild.
remember that. Yeah.
Like they made this giant like safari zone kind of thing. Like it made you feel like you're in the woods. But Nintendo's been doing their private directs during the same time. So everyone then pauses and watches that because it's a huge deal and they get to piggyback off of, hey, everyone's paying attention to the media for video games, but they don't have to pay any of those fees or anything like that. And
And
it's actually worked out pretty well for them.
and
And
they've said for a long time that developers having to prepare a vertical slice of whatever they're working on to show up and present at E3 was a really big detriment to the workflow because they have to just pause what they're doing, go down there and preparing something in the first place. So it was a lot of time and money spent. I mean, they had to pay for those booths and things, and I mean, it's kind of weird because like Jeff Gershman says, it's supposed to have been an industry show. It's supposed to be more for people in the industry to shake hands with other people in the industry, and we kind of just got spoiled, I think, starting in what the early '90s. I think it was the '90s with like being able to see what was going on there because like so much was new stuff was sort of being talked about that they were like, well, we need to report on this. And anyway, it probably should go back to being like, hey, we're not really going to present anything for people to see. We're going to present stuff for people who are in the industry who know what we're talking about to make something ugly or to talk about something ugly and kind of discuss it amongst ourselves outside of the public. That's kind of the way I would go back to doing it, but I guess that way it's not going to make money. So, you know,
well, I mean, essentially, yeah, what it was is it was for uh, massive companies to take a look and, back when uh you had retailers who had to, order their
right.
copies and so they needed to see if they were going to actually stock anything
Hey guys, so we had some technical difficulties right here in this next section. The internet went out at either Joe's place or my place. Anyway, we couldn't get a good connection going, so it was really garbled for a few minutes. But anyway, we kind of had to stop the podcast there and then pick back up a few minutes later when everything sorted out. So here it is, us kind of beginning again on the E3 conversation. Sorry about that.
All right, so E3's been, around since '95, and
95, okay.
essentially, yeah. So essentially, from there, a lot of that stuff was reported through magazines, and it was mostly meant for vendors. So retailers like Toys R Us or Sears, and they actually had to order their games. So
Right.
you needed to see what you wanted to put a purchase order for,
So it was in their
and
best interest to present the game like as best as possible. There's a lot of hype that comes up around it, and then like Toys R Us and Walmart are like, "Hey, like this is like something that's definitely going to sell a lot. We definitely want to get that on our shelves."
yeah, and you know, granted, exclusives weren't really a thing back then like they are now, but it was. I know certain retailers when it came to, for example, the Sega Saturn. Like I think it was only KB Toys that got them. It was like, and we're out now. Or was that the Dreamcast? Shoot, I'm getting them confused now. But anyways, it was a drop, like we're presenting, we're dropping, and it's so last minute that not everyone has it, and so it caused a lot of trouble.
I don't
We what we
remember.
have here now though is
Gosh,
when the as E3 had been continuing for a while, getting more attention, you get to see it on the news for a little bit. It'd be, your 5 o'clock news would be like, and there's this a video game expo or coming happening right now called E3, and that was like, hey. Your little kid's hobby is now actually a legit business. The rest of the world is taking notice, and there's actually money involved. So that was the one time a year where everyone got to hear about video games just for a little bit. And when it comes to the early 2000s, the internet being what it is, you're actually getting to see a lot more of the game footage. They'd be giving a lot of those trailers, and that was huge. It blew up, but then essentially a lot of people. Uh, yeah, you can blame it on a few different things, but one of the big things was, I think, is the ESA started just making a couple big mistakes. One of which was like doxing all the attendants.
that was
Uh,
not helpful. That's for sure.
they didn't do it just once though; they did it twice. Uh,
I remember when that last one that blew up, people were tracking it, and they I don't remember exactly the details, but I remember that they screwed up, and then it took them a while to get it fixed, and even when they got it quote fixed, it it was not like completely corrected, and people were complaining about it. It was like it went on for like weeks. It was like that stuff was out there for like for a long time, and people were really mad about it.
I mean, rightfully so. I mean, you
Yeah.
should, if you're going there and you're giving them your information so you can get your badge and your credentials. You The rest of the world doesn't need to know who I am, what's my contact number, what's my business number or like address. They don't need to know any of that.
Yeah, there were
Uh,
addresses and stuff that were leaked, and that's I remember listening to different podcasts at that time, and hearing some people say, okay, look, the people who are already doing this, they were saying, look, you need to uh, leak proof your contact information. You need to have a Google Hangouts number so that you can give them a cell number, but it's not your real number. And you need to you need to have like a mail box instead of your what do you call it? Like a post office box instead of your actual address as the address that you give them, things like that. And I was like, yeah, that's probably a good thing to do. But a lot of people were like, they're just not thinking in those terms. So a lot of their stuff got leaked, and some of those people get death threats because of their opinions. I mean, it's stupid, but they do get kind of crazy stuff like that sometimes. So they kind of have to take that privacy stuff seriously, and it just came at the worst time because we were, this was not too long ago, so E3 was already like circling the drain and trying to make a comeback, and it just was not. It was just the worst time to possibly do that.
Yeah, because it was in, like, 2019
Oh,
or, it's, like, when that happened, it was right before it was, like, either the year before the final one before the pandemic,
I think
but
it
when
was the year
2020
after
happened.
the pandemic. It was like
Yeah,
the first one where they could have maybe come back, and I remember
well,
that being a problem.
it was right, but it was I'm pretty, like I said, it happened I'm pretty sure it happened more than once because one of them was like,
Yeah,
"Hey, we have their information on our website. You have to go to, like, kind of a roundabout way, but if you were to poke around, you can find it." And, like, so 2019 was their last show before the pandemic. They ended up having the, uh, the cancellation, and people are like, "Okay, great. This either gonna kill them and they'll be dead, like GameStop, a lot of people are thinking, or it'll come back they'll get to reorganize, come back stronger." And then, 2021, they did the online,
yeah,
and now the last 2 years has, been canceled, so it's like, yeah, they're honestly, uh there's some good still needed to be for E3 for smaller companies, smaller groups, like, because that's how they mingle, you could network a lot easier because everyone is there. But other than the small independent studios, the big companies don't need it. I mean, they really don't. They can get everything they need by doing their own private events, and I think the big thing with E3 as a whole is because there's so many other big events happening. Like in the US, we have PAX, we have a bunch of PAXs. You have Gamescom, which has arguably been bigger and better than E3 for a while. Jeff Keighley's been doing his thing for a handful of years now as well. It's been getting only more steam uh, since the pandemic hit, and with E3 not in the picture, he's really gained the support of most of the people. And I mean, it depends on what you're looking for, but they kinda had an identity crisis because they're like, "Well, we're trying to make money. We need to try to get more attention." So that's when they opened it up to the public, and they charged a ridiculous amount of money for it. People still came because they wanted to see what it was all about, but a lot of the industry veterans really didn't like the way it was set up, and it wasn't it was like growing pains. I mean, granted, if they had enough time, they could have worked out the kinks, but it was just very poorly implemented in a lot of ways. And so a lot of people think that if you want to do a fan base thing, you should do PAX. PAX is good for hands on for a lot of uh, you know for the people. And now
yeah,
if you want to do an industry thing, you go to Gamescom, because Gamescom will actually have um, special days put aside for press and media. That's
yeah.
so they have their own
Yeah.
end to the people at the same time.
PAX and Gamecom kind of ate their lunch, kind of saw the future or saw a different niche and explored that, and that ended up being the future. Um, of like, people just want to go and see the games, and less of the like industry stuff kind of mixed in. The world kind of just changed. The world kind of just moved on from that method of telling everybody about your games coming out. But I mean, dang, back in the late '90s, the summertime, June E3 was awesome. It was great because you got that was the only time that you really got a full view of all the awesome stuff that was coming out. And I remember me and my friends at school, the like Electronic Gaming Monthly that was about E3 would come out, and we'd get it, and somebody else would get the PlayStation one, somebody else would get the Nintendo Power one, or whatever magazines that we were personally into, and we'd get that, and then bring it to school and be like, oh yeah, look at this one, look at that one, look at all this crazy stuff that's coming out. Um, and it was a lot of fun. It was a good way to build hype, and excitement around stuff. A lot of that's hype came crashing down whenever we actually got our hands on the games, but it was a pseudo kind of fun for a while, and it's sort of sad to see it go, but it's also like, Pandora's box is open, and the internet is just everything is instantaneous now. As soon as somebody wants to, and usually before somebody wants you to know about something, you're getting information on it. So it's kind of bittersweet, I would say. We have a different way of doing it, but I think it's less impactful now because it is so automatic. But yeah, it's
Yeah, you miss a lot of the big, the showpieces and the bombast behind it all. I mean, when you look at, companies, like Ubisoft have been able to make a real spectacle of things. And, it's like or you got like,
yeah,
uh was it Devolver? Like they know how to poke fun and make something really entertaining. So you'll miss out on those, and that's a shame. But at the same time, it's just I don't know, it's one of those things that like you mentioned before. People don't have to make these vertical slices anymore. They don't have to worry about doing a demo on stage, and then what happens if something happens, like it glitches or it screws up, and then what? Now you look like you're standing there with egg on your face and you're trying to recover. So
yeah. I remember there was a thing with I think the I think it was like Final Fantasy 15, where they were fighting this boss and it did not attack when it was supposed to attack. And it was really awkward for like it was hard to tell for a second, but then it was really awkward because like there's nothing really happening. And then the game, I guess, had a failsafe and it skipped the part they were trying to show, and they were able to kind of like save it and finish up. But I was like, man, that had to be very, very tense backstage whenever they were like watching it for those like 10, 15 seconds of it not doing what it was supposed to do. It was very
yeah,
scary.
but then you get, like the other ways around it, if you get caught, people would roast you alive for it, being like, you'd pretend like you're playing the, game, and then technically it's footage, it's pre-recorded video footage or something like that. It's
Yeah.
like people, you don't want to you're trying to it's essentially like a musician lip syncing on national TV. You know, they're doing the lip sync because anything could go wrong, and you want to make it the best possible, and it's fine if you perform well enough, no one notices. But
Yeah.
then if you get caught, you're really screwed.
Yeah, there's room for
Or
scandal, room for mistakes and errors, that's for sure. And then, but I mean, like, gosh, we're never gonna have another thing like Sega Saturn coming out at one price, and then like PlayStation coming out at a better price and being a better product, or like Nintendo backstabbing PlayStation and stuff like that. I mean, all that stuff happened like at or around or just before E3, because of E3. And it's,
oh yeah, well,
that's
the
got
whole
game
yeah,
history.
Microsoft and PlayStation, like price drops, and we can share games, and so, like that that is true. But at the same time, they don't need that anymore. Or
Yeah.
they can move it to a different. The only thing is, being an American, it's nice to have that. You know, relatively close. In the grand scheme of things.
I
While
mean, yeah, in
Gamescom,
LA.
is
Yeah.
not convenient for anyone in America, but for Europe, there that's it's
It's
more
dang near impossible, or
attainable.
Australia or Japan. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like you got to fly all the way to LA from one of those other continents. That is a lot tougher than, taking a domestic flight, even from like New York to LA. That's a pretty big flight, but it's not as bad as one of those other places. So, yeah, if it could come back, I guess it'd be okay. But I really think that whatever way it would come back is just going to be redundant for what we already have. I think if E3 comes back, it'll just be similar to a PAX or a Gamescom. It's not really going to be the E3 of old. So I'm kind of like, well, it's sad, but it's been dead for longer than a lot of people care to admit, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's part of the history, but unfortunately, it's needs to go with the history at this point.
Yeah.
And hopefully, just refine what we already have, and maybe make a couple of PAXs, something a little more impressive, or you know, Gamescom will only get bigger until it can't get any bigger. Then who knows? Everything will implode at one time, and then everything gets rebooted. That's the way it is now. So, all right, what else you got on the news then?
This is something you brought up. I saw this, but earlier, but I kind of forgot about it. The Last of Us came out on PC, and it's a bit of a buggy mess. I saw a thing
Yeah.
today saying that they released a patch that fixed 40 bugs. So I guess that's a thing. I mean, it's sort of weird. I know porting a game is not necessarily a snap of the finger, but and PS5 versus PC, it's just kind of weird because like they've already released this game on PS5. They've already had, I imagine they've already fixed all the bugs that were on that, and it's just kind of weird that porting it over, they've had to do so much bug fixing, but apparently they had some trouble, and it's a little better now.
Yeah, it's just, it's one of those things that it boggles the mind how it could have you know, gotten all the way to where the state, to release, and they're like, "Yeah, this is fine," because it's like, who did any of the QA testing? I mean, there's tons of memes, tons of just weird, weirdness of it. You have a lot of weird facial animations, glitches. You have like one of the cutscenes that was probably the most, egregious was the character models look like they're character models from like when it's supposed to rain, but they're indoors and they're just dripping water.
I heard about
So
that. They
they're
finally fixed that one.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's they're gonna fix all these, if it hasn't already been fixed, at this point. But that's the thing is it's like you come out in such a bad way that you just get review bombed across this, to high heaven, and then it's gonna take you a while to recover. I mean, you'd almost have to remove it, re-release it, but with something else. So like just instead of making it part one, just take the whole thing and make the Last of Us 1 and 2, collection. And that way it's under a new SKU. And then you can start the review process all over again. Because that's the only way that you can really recover from something quickly, I guess.
Yeah, it's almost like Sony doesn't want to release these games on PC. It's almost like they don't like that. No,
Yeah,
it's
but was
I
it
mean they
like
like
no one
money.
yeah, no one wants that bad of a image. I mean, and the thing
No.
is you have, Naughty Dog who has such a killer image, like everyone, they're praised all the time. And it's I think it's supposed to be like Iron Galaxy helped with this possibly. There's some questions of what like where does the blame go, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's no one wants to take full responsibility for it. Essentially, is how it is, and the real answer is everyone done messed up because really, like these things should have been. If you did a modicum of proper QA testing, you should have found these things, and if you found them, you should have been like, "Hey, wait a minute, maybe we need to fix these before they go out."
Yeah, I mean it's kind of
Um,
like how long has this game been out on PC? Like not very long, and they're already fixing all these bugs. And yeah, they need they need customer feedback. They need customer data to kind of fix a lot of these bugs. I get it, but I mean, how many more could have been fixed if they just pushed it off by 3 months? You've already released the game on PS5. Anybody that really wants to play it is already bought it on PS5. You're releasing it on PC so you can make some extra money and get some goodwill. And you kind of screw both of those things up at least a little bit when you release it as a buggy mess. So to me, these PC re-releases, if I was Sony, I'd be like, okay, we're going to release this on PC and we're going to push it off as long as it needs to be pushed off until it comes out. I mean, no game's perfect, but until it comes out where it's not going to be a media firestorm. Like we need our name to survive this silly little launch, and not be stuck with egg on our face.
Yeah, I mean, this is, granted, it could have been worse, but it by far could have been way better. And it's the kind of trend now for a lot of PC ports to come out. less than perfect.
Yeah.
Then that's just it is the new norm, and it should not be acceptable. I mean, and especially in a game like this where it's digital. It's not like they had to print copies of these things like, "Hey, we have to have these out in retail, by a certain deadline," or like, "These were printed, we found these mistakes later, we can't postpone this thing because it's already, sealed." No, that's not the case. So it's a shame. Granted, it I have 100% faith that it will be fixed, to the console equivalent, if not better, given enough time, everything with enough time. And I mean, look at Cyberpunk. I mean, that's now an acceptable game. It took a while, but it's finally there. And
Yeah. And it just
I do wanna go back to that now that it's not this, you know, pile of garbage. Uh, you know, and especially since they're gonna be coming out with, DLC, or like, in the future, I'm like, "Alright, well, I'll go back to Cyberpunk when they have the complete package." So long as that also isn't like, a garbage fire, I'll put my money down finally on that game.
yeah.
But I'm glad I held off, and that's unfortunate because I would have assumed that The Last of Us would have been a sure thing on PC. But that just proves that there's nothing's a sure thing, and especially nowadays. So
Yeah, you never know what's going on behind the scenes, but I do imagine that they, in a company like that, whose fault it is, like you're talking about, people kind of casting blame in different places. People who actually work at the company, they probably, I don't say for sure, but they probably all know whose fault it really is. And then there might be a mixture of blame there, but usually when there's things like that, nobody really can say for sure publicly, but everybody knows what the real blame is, and they'll probably be reprimanded, and that stuff will get figured out. I think in the back rooms and stuff like that. But yeah, anyway, so that's kind of the long and short of The Last of Us being a buggy mess. Um, the next thing I'll just go and jump to is Resident Evil 4 has been released. Real quick, Video Games Chronicle, noticed, gave it a 5-star review. Um, and it has sold 4 million copies already, which is pretty dang, a pretty good amount for so quickly upon release. Um, and then the other thing that caught my eye is that they have introduced a new DLC. Um, Already, and in the DLC is where they have put some microtransactions. I think you were talking to me a little bit before the podcast because you seem to know a bit more about kind of the thinking on this.
well, I just was, like, just knowing the game, because I don't know if you actually got a chance to ever play the game in its entirety.
Never have, no.
Um, alright, well, shame on you.
I know. I feel shame.
So no, it's just the only real DLC that they could have done microtransactions with would have been Mercenaries mode. I actually hadn't heard about the microtransactions until you mentioned it, so I was just speculating off the top of my head. That like okay, if it's mercenary mode, I know a lot of people liked it. It wasn't really my cup of tea, but it was more or less a survival, survive your waves type of thing. You have a time limit. You have to accumulate, a score essentially. I couldn't actually remember if there was an actual competitive aspect, as in like you and your buddies can fight against each other. But I remember in some of the other Resident Evil games, just you play with your friend and you can try to see how long you survive. Like in Resident Evil 5, and I think Mercenaries originally came in Resident Evil 3, Nemesis. That was when they first introduced it. But once again, it was just I kind of stayed away from it. So now I can see if you can put microtransactions in for if it's cosmetics. I've never been one to really care, I guess, if it's if you're just making a character look better. Yeah, it kind of stinks if there's some really good skins you want for a game, and there's no other way to get it without dishing out cash. I'm like, yeah, that's not the greatest way to do things. Uh, but I guess it's fair. I mean, it is they need to make money somehow. Now, if it's a play to win scenario, if you're playing to like especially if it's competitive aspect. If you're just playing for yourself, I also don't care about that.
Yeah, it,
You don't. I want to play an RPG, and I'm going to pay to level myself up. So long as you're not messing with other people, and yeah, people can argue you're ruining your own personal experience, but also if you don't have a lot of time, then maybe you're getting more of better experience out of it because you're not having to do the low level grind.
yeah,
Uh,
that they they're
you know,
saying that there's upgrade tickets that cost $3 each, sold the multi packs for $7 or $10, and this is all for the mercenaries mode, the free mercenaries mode. So it is good. I mean, it is the competitive aspect of the game that they are putting this on. It's I just kind of thought it was interesting that they waited. I mean, this is probably the best way besides cosmetic stuff. This is probably the best way to include microtransactions. I just thought it was a little bit sneaky the way that they waited for the reviews to come in before adding in the microtransactions because they know that's going to be detrimental to reviews. Probably not that big a deal. I don't think most reviewers now would be like, well, especially if they did it just the way they have. Most reviewers are gonna be like, well, the story of the original game is all great. Microtransactions are annoying, and that's probably gonna be the extent of it. But I just thought it was a little bit sneaky, and I wanted to point that out because I am a video game justice warrior.
Yeah, well, I mean, I for sure. I mean, even The Last of Us had paid DLC for different, outfits and different aspects, but I never touched that of the original game. I absolutely love the story, and I never once thought about paying the extra for their multiplayer function. But as far as this goes, yeah, I do agree. Like, I think you know what? I honestly can't remember if The Last of Us came out with um, their online at the same time or not as well. That makes me wonder because it's been so long, uh, and it is a little shady that you come out with this after the fact, but at the same time it's like
Yeah, I mean it's
are
not
are
like
they supposed to just wait until everything is 100% finished? I mean, like it's not the
I mean
core the
like
game is there, right?
speaking of shady,
So
it's not as shady as like the Shadow of Mordor, that Shadow of Mordor 2, whatever that one was called, and the, massive amount of microtransactions that were, but they basically ruined that game. I mean, the first game was a weak year, but it still won Game of the Year for a lot of outlets. And the second one was just like the same game, better in some ways, but they just bogged it down with so many microtransactions that just destroyed it. But so this is
yeah,
definitely
because
better.
the grinding they made the grind so hard towards the end that
You pretty
you
much
just
had
want to get it over with.
to
Yeah.
do it, yeah. So that this Resident Evil 4, it is better than that for sure. And I think that as there's a push and pull between corporations and the customers over the years, we kind of have both figured out where the line in the sand is on microtransactions, what we're okay with and what they can get away with. So now we have more companies that are able to go, they're going to navigate, they're going to do something a little shady, but it's not going to be egregious. And that's sort of the happy medium that I'm kind of glad we live in.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, but I'm glad the game's doing well. I'm looking forward to playing it myself. I've every few years I end up playing through Resident Evil 4. So I'm kind of curious to see how much it's changed. I've seen, yeah, I've seen the trailer like anyone else, but I've actually avoided any gameplay just so I can first, experience it firsthand.
Yeah.
And I should be getting my hands on that shortly. So yeah, I'll have more to talk about that in the near future, hopefully.
All right. So yeah, just jumping on to the next things. Time for our Microsoft Minute. Two little news stories that we'll kind of skip through because we're kind of running kind of long on some of this stuff. Um, First of all, a UK regulator reverses his decision about the Microsoft Activision deal. Kind of read into this a little bit. Basically, this UK regulator took a look at this stuff back in February and said, "Oh, it's bad," and then they just finished up their assessment and said, "Oh, it's actually good," or "It's actually not bad." And Sony is mad about it, and that's kind of the main thing. Is Sony said that it's I forget their exact wording. They said it is surprising and irrational. I think they took umbrage with this regulator only using one main economic model, but they seemed to like it whenever the regulator was on their side. So I think it's like, well, of course you would say that. Um, uh, and if I was a conspiracy theorist, I would say that Microsoft got to the regulator, at least got some money in his hand, and helped him make his decision. But I'm not a conspiracy theorist, so I don't think that, and I wouldn't say that. So that's a little bit of story, a little bit of scuttlebutt there. The other thing, also to do with Microsoft, is that they have cracked down on emulation. That is the coming from Kotaku. That's the kind of headline there. Basically, their headline is actually Microsoft escalates war against PlayStation Nintendo emulation on Xbox Series X/S. Like, okay, whatever.
All right, now you got to click on that one to know what the true story
I
is.
had to click, and they got my click. So yeah, so basically they just shut down classic game emulation, um, and they kind of sensationalized some of this stuff. But and there's some people who are mad about it, I guess. But anyway, I thought it was worth mentioning, but not really worth delving into. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the news. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So on now back to what we've actually been playing. Now for me, I've only been playing pretty much one thing, so I'll go first on this, and that's Dead Space Remake.
Okay.
So yeah, the new Dead Space Remake. I'm playing it on the Xbox Series X, and it has not disappointed me at all. It's a game that I highly recommend if you can play with headphones. The sound design is really good. I forgot how much I really enjoyed the original game. So when the first game came out, they had so much extra marketing behind it that it was really impressive for the time because they kind of made this whole connected universe. They came out with, I believe, a short film. They came out with an anime, uh,
Oh
and they
yeah, they
came out with
did. I forgot about
comics.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Aftermath or something. So they really kind of went hard on that, and it was just it really made it, you know, I don't know, having this extra lore behind it and understanding like more about the world itself was actually really fun. So I remember just really enjoying that game and also stomping on a lot of people or creatures and stuff. I just remember doing a lot of stomping in the original game. They I forgot, but they actually had like cheat codes in the original game too, like literal button presses to do just give yourself like full health or something like that. And that was I remember how
That's fun.
that was really I felt that was really strange for the time. Like this is a big game and you have cheat codes. Like I feel like no one does that anymore. And yeah, so currently I've put in I don't know like 5 or 6 hours into it, and I'm nowhere near as far as I should be. I realize that the way I play these games, I'm a super hoarder, and I will do my best to save and conserve as much ammo as possible. So I've probably boring as Get Out to watch, but it's like I play it so tense and I check every nook and cranny for everything. But it's visually is an amazing game and I'm having a great time with it. I'm hoping to have this beat next week, but because of Resident Evil, I'm like I'm not sure if I'm like I really want to beat Dead Space before I pick up Resident Evil. Uh,
Yeah, that's
I'm
the
not
way.
sure if I'm
I think that's
yeah,
the way. That's
that
kind of what I've started to do. I've have all these games that I'm like halfway through, and I'm like, no, I got to get through this one at least to beat the main story before I can move on to anything else.
yeah, I mean, it's just it kind of is like it, you know, I thought the original game was amazing. The second game was fun. I never actually played the 3rd Dead Space. The 3rd Dead Space is when they went multiplayer, and it slowly became that's when they became more action-oriented. That era of EA was they kinda did that for everything. They did that for Dragon Age and Mass Effect. They were really
Yeah.
pushing to
Okay.
make things, change whatever system you had in the first game, just throw it out the window, and we need to make this more action heavy because gamers don't have an attention span, and if it doesn't have more action, uh,
Yeah.
we're gonna lose them.
There was
That was
a
their whole motto.
there was a YouTube video I watched about that, and this guy just broke down the beginning of Dead Space 1, Dead Space 2, and Dead Space 3, and he just showed like, okay, here's Dead Space 1, here's how it works. Here's Dead Space 2. It's different, but it's still horror based. And then here's Dead Space 3, and it was like totally like action based, not scary at all, not really like it was just a total uh change to what had worked so well. And his point was basically your point that they just had actioned it up and kind of ruined it. And that I was trying to remember as you were talking about that. Yeah, it was Dead Space 3 that everybody kind of went like, oh, they put their head in their hands and was like, not like this, because of the changes that they made and kind of killed it. But maybe they'll be able to. Maybe if they keep remaking them, they'll be able to kind of save Dead Space 3 in a remake someday. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I if they do make it to 3, I would hope that they would make it multiplayer again because, I mean, granted, when the moment you make any horror game multiplayer, you completely kill the tension. I
Yeah.
mean, it still may be a little bit scary, but it's far more forgiving. Same thing can be said for like Fear. The first game
Mm,
had its tense moments, but when Fear became multiplayer, it's you can, or any like I said, it's like you just lose a lot of that tension, and especially if it's a game where you can revive each other, then you really don't mind if you go in, playing a little more, stupid because, your buddy's gonna cover you, right? At least that's the hope, and, yeah, most horror games are best played, like, alone in the dark with headphones or something because therefore you're completely immersed, but, this is a game mostly because my kids are sleeping, and I'm like, "All right, well, I've I've had to kinda play with one ear open from my from my headphones,
yeah.
and so I'm only getting half the sound design, but, I was actually able to play a few hours with, completely immersed, and I'm like, "You know what? This is great." Um, every little thing's freaking you out, to a certain extent. You're more cautious, you're like, "Okay," because you can hear them in the vents or you can hear you're hearing there's a low level soundtrack, I would say. It's like so it's not uh and it's not necessarily music all the time, but you'd hear like whispers or just constant something. And I'm like, wow, this is way creepier because a buddy at work was like, hey, do they actually have a soundtrack? And I'm like, you know what? I don't think they do. But I wasn't really paying too much attention because I was playing at that point, I was just playing on the TV with the volume low.
Yeah.
And when I put the headphones, I'm like, okay, nope, this is way more effective as far as but most of the horror aspects are more or less jump scares. Uh, Dead Space 2 is where they ramped up the gore. That was everyone remembers the marketing of like the eyeball. So
Oh
that was like
yeah, I've heard different podcasts talk about some of the stuff that happened in one of these like the torture
I think
scenes or something like that.
their whole campaign thing was like your mom, don't let your mom see you play this game or something like that. It's just
Yeah.
because it's like she'd freak out or something, and it was funny. It was just like that reminds me of like the over the top attitude induced early 90s ads or something like that. And it's just like that's kind of what Dead Space 2 really
Gosh,
felt like.
I miss those
Uh,
ad campaigns, man. Those are gosh, you ever watch some of those old like sometimes on YouTube they have like an hour and a half of 90s commercials or something like that. And I don't watch all of it, but I'll watch like a little bit and skip through and try to find some different stuff. And man, some of that stuff is it's just wild. Just the way that people thought about advertising back then. I guess those were kind of the highlights. There are plenty of like regular normal commercials, but anyway, just got it's kind of a non sequitur there. Sorry, but yeah.
oh, fine,
So
man.
but you're
Yeah,
you're enjoying Dead Space remake pretty well. Uh, uh,
yeah. I mean, especially since like the original game's like 14 years old. Uh,
Gosh, it
came
is.
out in
Oh
yeah,
eight,
it came out in '08. Yeah.
dude. I remember whenever it came out. Shout out to Braden. Braden lived down the hall from me in my dorm, and he bought it, and he was playing it, and I went over to hang out in his room, and he was playing with the lights off, and I can only watch him play it for like probably like 15, 20 minutes because I was just like, this game is scary as hell. I was just like terrified. I mean, because the graphics were really good for the time. This is on Xbox 360 that he was playing it on. The graphics were really good. You know, the sound design was fantastic. The creatures were unlike anything I'd really seen. There was no HUD, so you know you could really immerse yourself. And I was like, this game is scary as shit. And I was like, cool, man. I'm gonna go back and do some homework. And he's like, all right, bye. And I was just scared out of my mind. I wasn't even playing it. I wasn't even playing it. Anyway, good times.
Yeah, you're not alone on that one. My spouse is that way with most of the horror games. Like from even like the original BioShock. She's like, "Yeah, okay, I can only watch you play for so long, and now I gotta leave." So
Yeah,
that's why the
Bioshock. I mean, you know, Bioshock's not scary, scary, but it's definitely tense. It's definitely borrowing a lot of that horror stuff. So the original Bioshock, Bioshock 2, not so sure about, and Bioshock 3 seems like it was just or Bioshock Infinite or whatever. Just seems like it was basically just an action game with a little bit of I don't know.
uh, yeah, it was an action game with Infinite was an action game with a fun story twist,
Yeah,
and that was where that was mostly I was in it for the story, but no, BioShock One had a really good atmosphere behind it,
yeah.
and if I never finished BioShock Two, but everyone says the Minerva's Den
It's like
DLC
the best
was
DLC ever
top
made.
tier.
Yeah,
Yeah,
one of the best. I
uh,
think of Blood and Wine's probably maybe taking it for the top spot overall. But you know, yeah, it's supposed to be one of the better DLCs ever made.
yeah. So all right, now I guess on to you, man. You've put a lot of time into the next game that's coming up.
Yeah, kind of final thoughts on Hogwarts Legacy. Beat it. Beat the main story, I should say. 27 hours in. I think that they actually say that I forget what it was on how long to beat, but I remember it being like 26 hours, and I beat it in 27. And I know I did. I know I did at least 2 or 3 hours minimum of extra stuff. At least it felt that way. So maybe I did only just do 1 extra hour of stuff, and it just felt like longer. Or maybe it was stuff they were going to require me to do anyway. Um, so anyway, so I get to you know last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever we talked about it before, was kind of the end of me playing around in that game and just doing whatever I wanted to. After that, I just beelined it for the main story. Um, and it suddenly became a lot less fun to play once I started beelining it to the end. Just kind of skipping through. I didn't skip dialogue or anything like that, but just kind of like ignoring anything that wasn't main story. But I was able to cut through it fairly quickly because I had built up some other stuff. And the main story is good. You know, they do a good job of having a couple different things for you to do that they, you know, slight spoilers. Um, they do have kind of two main bad guys. You beat one who's kind of the minor bad guy, and then you beat the other one who's more of the major bad guy. And they do a good job of kind of making it, you know, you put the pieces together of this mystery, adding up the story stuff, and then you go and fight the main bad guy in this sort of dungeons spot. It's a very fast dungeon. You have somebody, one of the main side characters with you, as you travel through, and it's a good climax.
So,
So
question for you: is this during the same time as Harry Potter in school, or is this post?
they don't.
Is he like the Wizard King now? What like?
Maybe they tell you and I just missed it. I think they probably do at the beginning of the game and I just didn't really pay attention. But I found out from some other means this game is set in the 1800s. So it's set a long time before Harry Potter. Now, what you do find is that there are people related to the Harry Potter main line, Harry Potter, main timeline, whatever. There are people related to those people who are like either students or professors at Hogwarts. And I won't say who or what, but it's pretty obvious on some of these. But yeah, so there are connections, but because they want to, I mean, it makes sense because they want to have, you know, that whole story, that whole world to be able to tell stories in. But they want to be able to, tell what the stories they want to tell, but also not bother the main storyline of the future, and anything that they want to do after that if they want to do more Harry Potter stuff, because I know that's always in the back of their mind. So it's kind of like a Knights of the Old Republic sort of idea, where it's so far in the past that it doesn't matter. But yeah, it is somewhat relevant that way, I guess. So it's good. The main storyline's good. A lot of the side stuff was fun enough. They never really waste your time too much of anything that you have to like, or that you could opt into. Anything that any of the bonus stuff is pretty quick. You can like, hey, I want to try this puzzle. Oh, it sucks. I'm out. And you can just like go, oh, you don't have to invest too much time in it. So it's nice for that. The worst part of the game that I found was the item stuff. You constantly get items. I think I told you about this before, but you constantly get items, and you constantly have to sell them, and you're constantly running into your inventory maximum, holding maximum. And so you have to, like, every time you finish a dungeon, you have to go back to Hogsmeade and sell all the crap. And you're just like, okay, sell. And then you go back out and you do what you want to do. It's not the most irritating I've ever had in a game, but it's definitely not fun. That, and the other part of that is the way that your character looks. So the items you find, if you want to get the good item that has raised your stats, you have to equip it. And when you equip it, automatically it appears on your character. So there's a lot of dumb hats and dumb glasses and dumb clothes. So when you equip that stuff, it's like, well, now my character is wearing this dumb pair of glasses, and it's cool because they'll show up in all of the cutscenes. But if it's a dumb pair of glasses, then it just looks dumb when they're trying to have a serious conversation, which people like that, and that's fine. They can do that. So thankfully, they made it so that you can manually go into it and say, hey, I don't want that pair of glasses. That's dumb. I want this old pair of glasses, or I want no glasses, which is good that they do that. The problem is that every time you change to a new thing, if it sucks or you don't want it, then you have to manually go in and change it back to the thing you do want. So there needs to be a setting in this game where it's like,
just favorite an item.
Yeah, like a favorite, like this look. And every time that you get a new item, you can, like, it'll preview it or something, like, preview, do you want to do this? No. And you can just like one click button, where you can be like preview, no. And then you can go back to playing the game instead of having to use, the cursor on the PlayStation to scroll very slowly over, click in that, click square, and then return, go click on that original default thing that you want, and then you go back to playing the game. Those are the main things that I found a problem with. Everything else that I encountered was fine, was either fine or fun. And most of it was actually very fun. I think the combat was really, really good. I mean, especially for how little, J.K. Rowling really dedicates to combat in in the Harry Potter series of books, and even what they did in the movies. They really are able to expand on it in an appropriate way that's fun and all that stuff. So yeah, it's and then they introduce animals and stuff like that. I hadn't gotten to that before, but they introduce the magical animals, so you can ride different ones of that, and then you got your broom and stuff. So all in all, it is a really good game. It is definitely, and you have a lot of stuff to do. Very beautiful game as well. So it is rare and difficult for a game to really earn that $70 price tag, but this game I think does it. I'm not going to talk about it anymore on this podcast, but I do find myself wanting to go back and play it. I'm playing some other stuff now, but I do find myself wanting to go back and play it every once in a while. So anyway, I didn't mean to talk about it this long, but yeah, good game.
All I can think of is when you're saying like wearing silly things during cutscenes is Monster Hunter does that really well. Where I think uh, the hats you can get, or like it's a helmet. It's a skin for, they have like these little eels that pop up in the world, and so the neck is like this long extended neck and head that just wiggles. And so as you're like having this big cutscene where like you finally defeated the big monster, and you're pushing them away and your head's just wiggling around, and the other people are like talking to you like, way to go, they're all like super proud of you and like, we've did it. And it's just like it completely sucks you right out of it. I'm like, that's the right kind of stupid. um, it's like, or you didn't realize this was going to be a big battle, and here my character is like cosplaying as the cat, and so I just have this giant cat costume on, and I'm like, all right, yeah, sure,
Here,
go me.
here we go. This is what we're doing now. Yeah, that game is good and silly. Hogwarts Legacy doesn't really try to be as silly, um, but it is really wholesome too. Like I don't have kids, but if I did have kids, this is the kind of game that I would want them to play, because it is a good game. Like, it is a game where I'm like, okay, you're not learning to play bad, crappy games. But it's really wholesome. Like, they like never curse, and the storyline is pretty unique, and it's all in all, it's a dang good game. Yeah.
Well, maybe you just weren't used to the wizard curses.
Oh yeah, I
uh
guess I do have some of that, I guess.
well, I was gonna say, no, I'm just saying there's a Harry Potter Puppet Pals.
Oh
There's
yeah.
there's an episode about wizard curses, and
Republican. I
that's
remember
really a classic little
that.
skit.
Dude, Harry Potter Rebels. I remember when those were coming out. Those were freaking legendary. We would laugh so much at those. Man, they were great.
I got my part-timers when I was working at GameStop to we did the mysterious ticking noise. And
Oh,
so
dude.
I was doing the Snape, and then the other guys, like one guy crouched behind the counter, and he just pop up and just like convulse his whole body as midair, be like Dumbledore, and then he just hide behind the counter again, and he jumps back up. And yeah, it was pretty funny. We had some good times because of that. But yeah, so
Voldemort,
if you
Voldemort,
wizard
oh,
curses.
Voldemort, Voldemort. Dude, man, the internet is not as good a place as it once was because
It
of
was
that.
more it was a little more pure back then.
It
Just leave
was
it at that.
It feels that way, that's for sure. Quaint and all. Anyway, so that's enough about Hogwarts Legacy. I'll jump over to the other game I played a little bit of to talk about something new, which I'm not going to talk about for very long. I played a little bit of Soul Hackers 2, and I do mean a little bit. It was a struggle to get through the first 30 minutes of this game. This game,
Is that a Shin Megami game?
it's similar to that. It's an Atlas game. It's an Atlas game. So it's made by them, but it is not nearly. It seems like it was put out to die. Honestly, I saw the reviews were pretty bad, pretty middling to bad for it whenever it came out. Because I was considering buying it. When I saw some of those reviews, I was like, yeah, I'm not going to spend $60 on this. So it finally came to Game Pass. I was like, okay, I'll give it a try now. This game does everything in its power to lose you as fast as possible. It is a ton of cutscenes that are boring. and they're just boring. They are doing tons of exposition. They're explaining all this stuff to you. In the first half hour, in the first 20 minutes, I got to walk about 30 feet one time. And in that time, I was trapped in an area and just walked into an alley. And then another cutscene appeared. And then they revealed something, which I didn't really care about yet because it's in the first 30 minutes of the game, and they kind of introduce a mechanic and they do a little fight, and it was very pedestrian, boring, RPG, turn-based combat. Probably could get interesting, I guess, later, but and by that point I'd kind of started skipping through dialogue, and it was voiced dialogue, and it was nicely voiced, so I appreciated that. But they were just taking so long to get anywhere with it that I was just like, okay, I'm just going to I'm just going to read it, make it pop up and read it as fast as possible and skip through. And I got through, um, through that little battle, and then got to the next point and just made sure I could save. And about 30 minutes had passed, and I was like, okay, I'm going to save it and come back and maybe play this. At least let myself be able to come back and play this later if I want to. But it was maybe it gets better. I don't know, but it was one of the worst beginnings to a game I've seen in a long time. Just
I think that's just Atlas games, man. It's a lot of those anime and old school RPGs. That's just how they roll. They're just very slow. Uh, I just did a quick look because I just wasn't curious what the average score was, and looks like a lot of the big name outlets are giving it roughly about a 7 out of 10. Um, so
it's got to get a
uh,
lot better then, because because I mean, I hate to compare it to like one of the better games of all time, but Persona 4 Golden has a slow start, but it pulls you in a lot better. And I think that it pulls you in the way a movie pulls you in better. It's like you're here and you're getting off into this new town, and then you're kind of able to talk to this person, but but Soul Hackers 2 starts you out in this computer world, and you have no idea what you're really looking at, and you don't really care. And then this other lady comes in and they're just explaining everything to you. And Persona 4 Golden is like, it's like feeding you things as you kind of ask for them, as you kind of need them. And this is just, I can just see why there wasn't a lot of fanfare that came out for this game. And it was sort of just like put out there to be whatever. It was a half-assed reboot of an old series, and it's just sort of sad. It's like, nobody was asking for this. Nobody really wanted this. It couldn't have made you that much money. Put it on the back burner. Let it simmer for some more time. Try to make it more flashy, more better, and release it when you are between big releases. Um, that's just my
So
opinion.
when it comes to so this is part of the Shin Megami Devil Summoner franchise. There's you got your Shin Megami Persona games, and the Persona are I guess the most mainstream and easily accessible. When it came to a lot of the other stuff, that those were always way more hardcore dungeon crawlers, whether it's Digital Devil Summoner. You had a couple. There's quite a few of them, but anything that had Shin Megami in front of it, it was like, okay, you know what you're getting into. It's more or less you getting kicked in the teeth for a long time
Until you
as you're
figure out the
like,
battle system.
yeah, it's just you're it's a neat story, and it's always, very dark, and, especially when it came to, a lot of the RPGs at the time where it was like, it's a high fantasy setting, and everything's, whimsical and colorful. No, this is everything of his was, bleak and, doom and gloom. Uh, that was kind of just the way that rolled, and you're like, "Alright," so especially if you were it's like, this is more the edge lord territory, but they were entertaining. if you don't like dungeon crawlers, then or you usually get to a point where like I made it pretty far, and then all of a sudden I hit this boss. Now I got to grind for the next like 2 hours before I can actually get a high enough level to fit, and then
Yeah, that
that's usually where I've lost most of my interest.
and that that is kind of par for the course for a lot of those kind of classically styled JRPGs. I've played a pretty penny number of JRPGs in my time. Kind of cut my teeth on those. So, I am ready for a lot of the things that people find annoying about those, but it also kind of my experience with them sort of makes me a bit of a snob, I guess. So I'm not, I know there's a lot out there, and there's a lot that I haven't played that I still want to play too, that are widely renowned. So kind of getting into this one, I was just like, yeah, I would rather. I just wanted to have something to talk about, for the cast, and I've achieved that now. So I
I would
probably
say play the if you're gonna play one of these old school games, play the remake or the HD version of Nocturne. It's Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne. That
that
one
one's
was
out,
a
yeah.
PS2 game. That one was I remember liking it quite a bit. It was unique. It's like post-apocalyptic Tokyo. Uh, Dante from Devil May Cry makes an appearance.
Holy
Uh,
shit!
Yeah, right. It was
Wow.
a crossover you never saw coming, and you're like, "Oh man, this is." I remember blindly buying the game, just being like, knew nothing about it, just saw it came in. I'm like, and I bought it like sight on scene because I'm like, you know what? Because at that point, I already owned Persona 1 and 2 on the PS1, and like anything with Shin Megami on it was really hard to come across because there was always limited production, and then next thing you know, it just disappeared and never to be seen again. Um, and so yeah, they've recently came out with an HD remaster. It's like it's available pretty much everywhere, I believe, or at least, and no, it's on Steam for sure. And that might be if you want to play a more classic version of that. But I do believe they also came out with on the Switch. They recently came out with a newer version, or the Shin Megami 4, I believe. So they do have some other uh, ones that might pique your interest. Uh, oh, it was 5, I'm sorry. It was so yeah, it was the 5th one, and that just came out, like, a few years ago, and I know you're a big Switch fan, so that might actually pique your interest. Like I said, I've kinda dipped out of those. I just do not have the patience for them. 'em. I'll
They're
play the
so
Personas.
long. They're just so long. I mean, like Persona 5 is a 100-hour game. That's insane. Like I want to play that game. I've wanted to play that game for so long, so bad, and it's finally on Game Pass. And I'm just like, I know that I'm not gonna get anywhere near finishing that game. To think that I could play that game for 30 hours and not even be a third of the way through it. That's about where I dip out on most games is 30 hours. Like I gotta get done with them in about 30 hours. That's like the long of it. And I want to play that game. I love Persona, and those games are so much fun, but it's just too much.
Yeah, I liked what little 5 I played. I say that because I was playing it and then I came to it late, picked it up, and then I was playing it, and I'm like then they announced for the same generation that they're coming out with Royal, and I'm like, "Oh, you guys, I hate you so much right now," because I had just bought it, and I'm like, so thanks for letting me know I just wasted my money and I'm out. So I'm like, I'm not gonna finish putting in all this hours into a game that is not the complete version. But I put too much time into it that I'm not gonna bother playing Royal. I'm like, just there's no way. So I watched the anime instead, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that's
So
probably the best route to go for that. But anyway, so that's enough of about Soul Hackers 2. Yeah, so it's too bad. I didn't think it was going to be good. I knew I wasn't going to probably play through all of it, but just so I kind of did set myself up for a bad one, but I really wasn't expecting it to be quite that meh. So yeah.
all right. Well, we're coming to a head here soon, so we can give you a few more minutes to talk about what you had recently watched after everyone been telling you to watch it for years.
Yeah, people have been telling me to watch this movie for years. It's been on my list. I finally got to it. It's called The Babadook, Australian horror movie, often called one of the best of all time. It's on a lot of top lists, definitely top 10 on a lot of lists of all times. I think this came out, what, 2015? It's been a good minute since it came out. So I wanted to get to it. I finally did. And it's good. It's the hype is real. It is a very good horror movie. Not too long, as most horror movies are. Not too long, but it skips through a lot of the early stuff. It does a good job setting up the early stuff, and it could take a long time to do that, but it doesn't. It kind of goes. It kind of gets you to the point where you're like, I know what's about to happen, and then it kind of skips the thing that you know it's going to happen because it's really not that important, and just goes to the aftermath, and that does that several times, and then you get into the like meat of the movie, which has to do with the Babadook, um, and they've set up enough stuff for the right payoffs and the mystery to sort of unfold. Um, and it's really good for all that. But something that I noticed about it was the lighting. I know it's kind of weird to talk about, but the lighting in this movie, the camera work is really top notch. They really know what they're doing. They do a lot of good stuff with kind of tricking you as a viewer and putting you in the mind of the mother that's like the main character in this movie. They do a really good job of kind of making you feel like you're seeing things the way that she feels like she's seeing things. And by the end, they're doing a lot of weird stuff with light and kind of stage lighting and kind of it gets very supernatural, but not in a weird way. It's really good. It's a really good movie that they also don't belabor the mystery. They don't over explain anything. They let a lot of stuff go unanswered and sort of strange happenings just sort of hang there. So yeah, overall good movie. So if you haven't seen it, and you like horror at all, or thrillers thrillers at all, this is something that you really have to uh, cross off your bucket list. It's definitely worth that.
Yeah, as funny enough, The Simpsons, the last Treehouse of Horrors, their first segment is their take on this. Because yeah, it was that, and it was the was it Death Note, and then
Yeah,
it was I forgot what the third skit was. But yeah,
that's a pretty good lineup with
uh,
those two.
yeah, it was one of their better ones in the last couple that in my most recent memory, but I more or less stopped watching them, and I was only watching them for the Treehouse of Horrors just to see what, like, they would spoof off of, and I just remember at one point, I think it was, like, 2010, 2011, I had stopped cold turkey because like, they all had happy endings, like, literally, it wasn't, like, happy ending and then, like, the twist at the end where you could see, like, the monster in the background. It's like, no, like, legit, everything's, like everything's hunky dory. It was just like nothing was remotely. I don't know. It's just they lost their edge, and so I kind of gave up on them for a long while, and then I started watching them back up again just last couple years ago. And yeah, the Death Note was hilarious.
Yeah,
I
dude,
yeah,
that one is pretty great. I would love to see the Simpsons do more anime. Just even just like every once in a while, because
it
that
was
was
it was
so
fun to see the
funny,
other characters there too. Just
so
Disco
funny.
Stew in the background,
Yeah,
stuff like that.
yeah,
But yeah, all right. Well, that's good. All right. Well, thank you guys for sticking around to this far. Yeah, we had a little technical difficulty there in the middle, so
yeah. I'll
hopefully
probably
it
work
won't be too
in
jarring.
probably work in a like a little disclaimer. Hey, we had a little thing there. So I'll work that in there so people aren't too bothered by it. But yeah,
All right. Well, sounds good. Thanks again, guys. This has been episode 41 of Another Dead Pixel, and just until next time, you guys take it easy.
all right, bye.